Okay, so we're gonna go into part 3 of Zion's Affair, presented to you by the House of Rakaya's Written Works. Okay. Zion and Malcolm just sat at the bar and they just laughed and laughed, and the time just kept going, and it's as if it didn't exist anymore. I mean, catching up with old friends can sometimes be so wonderful. So she just sat there, and I mean, she found herself getting more and more intoxicated, though. So she was just like, "Oh my God!" She said, "I didn't know I was going to drink so much, and I'm feeling so. I'm feeling like I should call it a night." And he said, "Well, look, let me take you back to your hotel. I don't mind." He said, "You've been drinking, and he said, or would you like for me to call you a Lyft or Uber?" He said, "Or there can be the third option. I can get you a room here, and that way you can just leave in the morning." She thought about it. She said, "Well, I guess that would be the safest route, to get a room here and I leave in the morning." She said, "Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that." And so he said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "Give me a moment. I'll go book you a room." And he said, "I'll be right back." So Rebecca sat at the bar and she just looked around and she was feeling intoxicated. And so she wanted to finish off her drink. She just had just a little left. So she sat there. And so out of nowhere, some man walked up to her. And it wasn't anybody that Malcolm had introduced her to. So she just looked at him, and he walked up to her and he stood right next to her. He said, "Hey," he said, "how you doing?" He said, I am, I'm Bobby." And he extends his hand, and she said, "Hi, Bobby." She didn't grab the hand. And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "My bad." He said, "I don't mean to intrude in your space here, and I just saw you from across the room, and I just wanted to let you know you're really beautiful." Thank you, Barbie. I appreciate the compliment." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I feel like I know you from somewhere. Haven't I seen you before? Or have you seen me before?" She looked and she said, "Bobby, I can't recall." He said, I know. Stephen, that's how I met you. Stephen's your husband, isn't he?" She said, "Yeah, something like that." And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, what are you doing here?" "I'm just out meeting a friend." And he said, "Okay." He said, "You talking about the black guy, right? With the beard, huh?" "Yeah, that's my best friend." And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Does Stephen know you're here?" And she said, "Bobby, I think you're overstepping your boundaries here. You can actually go back on the other side of the room and watch." I see where you're going with that. He said, "Well, I think I might just give Stephen a call and just, catch up and see how things are with him." She said, "You do that." So Bobby walks on across to the room, and he kept looking back to see had she moved or what was going on, but he kept his eye on her. Once he got back over to the table where he was where he was sitting, he just watched her. So she just looked at him, and she started feeling uncomfortable because who was he? And yeah, he may know Stephen, but he didn't know her. So she took him out of her head, and she thought, this guy is so weird. So finally, Malcolm came back to the bar, and he said, "Hey, I got your room." He said, Here's your key card, and he's everything that you're gonna need in order to get into your room." He said, "Other than that, you're all set." He said, "Did you want another drink, or did you want to go ahead and head up?" And she said, "Malcolm, just have a seat for a moment." He said, "Yeah, sure. What's going on?" She said, "Don't look that way, but there's a gentleman that just walked up to me. He said his name was Bobby, and he said he knew me. So I told him, and he asked me if I knew him, and I told him no. And so then he said he recognized me through my husband, Stephen." And so I told him that's fine and all. And he asked me, did Stephen know that I was here with you? And so Malcolm said, he said, well, I'm just going to kind of lean back. And he said, what color does this guy have on? He said, he's the guy over there with the black hat and all black. He has on all black. And so he leaned back and he was able to catch the guy from the peripheral vision. So he said, oh, okay, I see him. He said, I wonder what are you up to? He said, he kind of give me, he said, I'm an attorney and I kind of got an eye for stuff like this, but he kind of give me like a PI look. He might be a private investigator. He might be, Stephen might be having you followed. He said, that's what this guy gives me the impression of. And she said, you would think he'd be having me followed for what? He said, I don't know. He said, and yet he's the one's cheating on you. She said, that's how cheaters move. She said, they be looking for a reason to, she said, damn, he's trying to set me up with something, but what? He said, I don't know. He said, I don't know. He said, but you better keep your eyes and your ears open. He said, you stay aware of your surroundings because divorce is messy, and if Stephen was already planning on leaving you for this other girl, ain't no telling. He said, so you stay aware, and if you need anything, I'm an attorney, so you need anything, sis, I got you. Yeah, something's not adding up. So they had another drink, and they went ahead and drank it, but the whole time this guy's just turned his whole body just in position to their direction and just was watching them. So she finally got up and they headed toward the elevator, and the guy ran and caught up with them, got on the elevator with them. He was trying to see something, like whether they were going on the same floor or separate floors. And it just so happened they were going on the same floor because the way Malcolm is raised is to protect the women around you that surround you, whether they're sisters, family, friends, just in general. He was just a protective guy. It was in his nature. So he made sure that her room was right there next to his. So when he pushed the button for the floor that they were going on, the guy notices that it was only one button pushed. So, of course, he played it off and pushed a button ahead of theirs that was on a higher floor. So he just stood there quietly, and Malcolm and Zion just looked at the guy, and so it's finally Zion said, she said, what's up? What's to you? She said, why are you following me? He said, no, don't look at it that way. I'm not following you. He said, what's your name again? She said, that's not important. She said, if you know Stephen, then Stephen can talk to you about it. She said, but why are you following me? Are you being paid to follow me? No, of course not. Why would I stoop so low? He said, who has a professional like that? And she said, possibly you. She said, it's kind of weird that you ran and jumped on this elevator. And she said, sir, she said, what's going on? Ma'am, I am a guest here at this hotel just like you, obviously. And she said, oh, okay. So finally, they came to their floor and the door opened. And she turned around and she said, you tell Stephen to watch himself watching me. He's the one that needs to be watched. And so the guy began to laugh. He said, ma'am, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. And she said, yeah, and I think you do too. She said, you have a good evening, sir. And so her and Malcolm walk away and go into the direction of the room while the guy just goes wherever to what floor that he was going to. So finally, when they get to the room, he said, well, look, he said, I got you a room right next to mine. He said, if you need anything, if anything strange happens, if this guy comes out to be a creep and he started, or anything, he said, at any time of the night, he said, let me know. He said, just knock on my door. She said, thank you so much, Malcolm. I really appreciate you. So they both go into their rooms, and the next morning, she jumps in the shower and puts her clothes back on, and she goes next door to knock on Malcolm's door. Malcolm, it's me, Zion. There was no answer. So she goes again. Malcolm.